The Landry family of Warren, Rhode Island. The Warren branch began with Luc Joseph Landry from Lanceau-Griffon and Elmire Louise Lachance from Petite Vallée on the Gaspay Peninsula in Quebec. Here's a photo of the whole family taken in the early 1940s. One day I was talking to my aunt, Sister Alice Landry, whose hobby was documenting the genealogy of the Landry family. I showed her some old photos from my parents' photo album. Her curiosity about our family's past lit a spark in me. Back in 1967, Sister Alice and I visited the National Archives in Paris to do research while I was studying in Europe. In 1983, Sister Alice and I went to Quebec City to dig deeper into our family history. We spent hours in the city's archives, then traveled to Petite Vallée on the Gaspé Peninsula, where my mother was born. That research led me here, to this story. Now at the age of 80, I am able to bring these photos to life with the help of AI. Some of the photos you'll see have been enhanced, colorized, and even animated. Let's start in 1634, when René Landry le Jeune was born in Martézais, France. The first Landry ancestors to Acadia came from the Loudun area of Poitou in west-central France. In 1653, at the age of 19, René immigrated to Port Royal in Acadia, which is now located in Nova Scotia. 5 unrelated Landry families migrated to North America. 2 of these are ancestors to our branch. Both settled in Acadia in the middle 1600s, and curiously, both were headed by men named René. They are therefore distinguished from each other as René l'Aîné, the older, and René le Jeune, the younger. Some say that they were half-brothers. Which one is our ancestor? Here's my DNA chart. For those of us who share 2% indigenous DNA, it's likely that we descend from René le Jeune. Historical research indicates that his mother, Marie Salé, was married to Jehan, or Jean-Claude, a Micmac man, making René le Jeune par indigenous. René l'Aîné, on the other hand, has no known indigenous ancestry. This suggests that those of us with indigenous ancestry are probably from the line of René le Jeune. In 1660, René's son, Antoine, was born at Port Royal, Acadia. In subsequent census data from 1678, 1680 to 1752, there is mention of Landry ancestors living in Port Royal and in the surrounding areas. René died in Annapolis Royal in 1693 at the age of 59 and was buried in the Garrison graveyard. This is where the direct lineage breaks down. It is not until 1873 that we pick it up again. There is a mention of the birth of Luc Landry on May 18, 1873, to Dosithée Landry and Marie Duguay in a parish book in the town of Anse-au-Griffon, a short distance from Petite Vallée. Here's an early likeness of Luc from a photo taken on a metal plate, called a daguerreotype. A note accompanied the birth record. The Landrys were not very numerous in Lanceau-Griffon. We find them above all in Carleton. The first Landry to be established here was Dosithée, son of Léon and Marie Duguay. He also married a girl of the same name, Marie Duguay. Here's a photo of Luc's brother, Théophile. It is unclear when Dosithée moved from Carleton and settled in Lanceau-Griffon. Census records of 1791 show that Marie Duguay's family lived in Duguayville. Here's a map showing the places where the Landrys resided. In 1885, my grandmother, Elmire Louise Lachance, was born in Grande Vallée to Jean Lachance and Wilhelmine Brosseau on August 28th. She was one of 5 children, 3 brothers, Charles, Matthias, and Gabriel, and 1 sister, Alice. On November 3, 1903, Luc and Elmire were married in Saint François Xavier Catholic Church in Grande Vallée, in the presence of Luc's friend, Charles Coulombe, and family members, Georgina Lebreu, Auguste Brousseau, Lumina Fournier, and Charles Lachance. Elmire was 18, and Luc was 30 years old. The next year, on July 21st, 1904, my mother Yvonne and her twin brother Yvon were born in Petite Vallée, a a short distance from Grand Valais. 4 other children followed: Addie, Lucy, Antoinette, and Gertrude. Luc worked as a lumberjack and foreman in the local sawmills, probably in his father-in-law, Jean Lachance's mill. Like many others living on the upper Gaspay Peninsula, Luc also fished for cod, farmed, tapped maple sap, and worked in construction. Because of the area's geographic isolation, harsh winters, limited crop growing time, and sparse resources, the area then and even today does not support a large population. The Dominion Lumber Company's presence in Grand Valais was a defining chapter in the village's history. The company became a major employer, providing jobs to a significant portion of the local population, including my grandfather, Luc. He was a foreman of Landry camp. Coulée-à-Luc, where his logging camp was located, is named after my grandfather. Here's a photo of my cousins Jean Landry Connery and Lucien Minville. Life then was hard. One of the few places where the family could buy supplies was from the company general store. Here's a glimpse of what he bought at the factory store in January 1907. Surviving in the northern part of the Gaspé Peninsula took strength and endurance. Residents had to have many different skills to make a living. In the winter, families would spend their time making furniture and tools similar to these newly made buckets by Lucien Minville. Men carved wood sculptures. Here's Elzéar Roy of Pointe-à-la-Frégate woodworking. Women spent their time making rugs and crocheting items they could sell to summer tourists. Here's a doily my mother made. In the spring, the family supplemented their income by making maple syrup. It is still done today. Here are photos of my cousin Lucien Minville in his cabin au sucre and the final products. In the early 1910s, Dominion had ceased operations, and job prospects were virtually non-existent. Like many other families in Quebec at the turn of the 20th century, Luc and Elmire joined 900,000 other French-Canadian immigrants and moved to New England, looking for jobs and a better life. On May 14, 1912, Jean and Wilhelmine Lachance, Luc and Elmire Landry, and 6 children took the Grand Trunk Railroad and entered the United States at Island Pond, Vermont. Here's a letter my mother wrote to the U.S. Immigration Department explaining their entry. Then, they traveled to Mill Road in West Pownell in Cumberland County, near North Yarmouth, Maine, to join Elmire's uncle, Samuel Lachance. At first, they lived on Gray Road in North Yarmouth, Maine. Luc worked for Samuel Lachance, Pierre Gagnon, and Charles Duas, a foreman in a logging camp. Here's an enhanced image of what a logging camp looked like at the time. Luc purchased 1.5 acres of land on Mill Road from Susan Hayes on October 20th, 1919. Here's my mother and her brother Yvonne in a photo of their elementary school classmates in Maine. Yvonne is the girl standing in the center, in front of the person waving. 3 more children were born during their stay in Maine: Maurice, Alice, and Frank. In November 1920, Luc and Elmire moved to Warren, Rhode Island. They first settled at 21 Brown Street. In Warren, 4 more children were born: Donna, Irene, Renee, and Florence. In May 1926, they bought a house at 19 Barney Street from Charles and Freeman Bassaw for $5,750. The house was built in 1800. Here's the deed. From 1926 to 1931, Luc worked at the Warren Manufacturing Company, the National Independent Rubber Company in Bristol, and finally, the Gulf Refinery Company in East Providence. During his retirement years, Luc operated a variety and tobacco store on Main Street and a snack bar in the basement of St. Jean's Catholic Church. Here's Luc in front of his store. Luc was an active member of the Cercle Jacques Cartier and l'Union Baptiste of St. Jean's Church. Here's a 1937 video of Luke and Elmire. On December 23, 1940, Luke became a United States citizen. Here he is in his favorite chair smoking his pipe around 1950. Shortly afterwards, on August 11, 1951, Luke passed away at the age of 78. Elmire was a housewife who raised 13 children. For a time during World War II, she worked at the Bristol Manufacturing Corporation, where she earned $22.32 per week. Here's her paycheck and Social Security card. Elmire became a citizen on October 25, 1943. 2 years later, in 1945, during a snowstorm, my mother, Yvonne, gave birth to twins, Pauline and me, in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Here are some family photos of the era. This is St. John the Baptist Elementary School, where most of the family's children attended. Here's Elmire in the kitchen with one of her granddaughters, Kathy Dutra. Here she is speaking on the phone. Here I am with my grandmother in 1964, when I returned to Warren for a visit. And here she is, cutting her birthday cake. Then, on April 27, 1967, Elmire died at home at the age of 84. Both Luke and Elmire are buried in St. John's Cemetery in South Warren. Here are the last 4 reunions from the 1960s to 1990s in the backyard on Barney Street. The local newspaper printed an article about the Landrys celebrating a family reunion in 1978 that reported that Luke and Elmire had over 100 offsprings. Like many other French-Canadian families, Luke and Elmire's descendants spread far and wide, stopped speaking French at home, and married outside their ethnic group, blending into the American culture. After 400 years, the Landrys of Warren are just one branch of more than 100,000 descendants in North America, all beginning in 1634 with René Landry Lejeune. This docu-story is dedicated to Sister Alice Landry, and a special thanks goes out to all my relatives who have contributed. A book containing these photos can be found in The History of Family Photography and is available on Amazon. Here's the barcode.